Thank you very much. So today I will speak as directed by the host of this summit. To break down, I will talk about the industrial status quo, potential risks, and also a roadshow of the coking coal industry that we did for 2023. In terms of the industrial status, everybody sitting here is an insider. We have heard a lot of presentations today, but I still want to share with you some additional points. I would like to emphasize that coking coal is the raw material of the coal industry. It's a strategic resource. Within the foreseeable future, coking coal is indispensable and irreplaceable for the steel industry in China. Why it is a strategic scarce resource? Because in China, it's very scarce resource, and we only account for 10% of the global total. And right now, the reserves and the reserves of coal and steel plants, they are characterized by long process of steel making, and coking coal accounts for or steel production accounts for a big portion of the world. And China accounts for half of the world's steel plants, but 67 to 68% of that is driven by coking coal. So, which means that we have a very long cycle or process of using coking coal to support the production of steel. And by 2035, we're going to peak our carbon emission. Before that day comes, we are still going to increase the production of coking coal, and after we peak the carbon emission, we're going to have to pay for the carbon tax. So that is why I say that within the foreseeable future, coking coal will be indispensable and irreplaceable. So this is simply to give you some confidence from a status quo point of view, and coking coal would be indispensable in the foreseeable future. I'd like to set straight some basic concepts. Coking coal is a kind of bituminous coal for producing coke and then used in steel making. And also coking coal should be distinguished from fuel coal for power generation or heating. It is basically raw material. I have seen a lot of articles from social media and from many different channels. We are talking about the stabilization of coal supply. A lot of that based on the overall increase of coal supply in general, but actually they are not so relevant. In February and January this year, the annualized capacity of coal is 1.4 billion tons. In 2021, it's a 1.35 annualized billion tons. But in the same time, coal production increased by 5.8% year on year, and today you saw the data. Coking coal production dropped year on year. So you have to make a distinction between coking coal and coal. This is very important for our discussion going forward. We have heard a lot of the times that there are national level meetings about ensuring the supply, but this is mainly about power generation purposes of coal and heat supply, and coal for heat supply purposes. But that will have some spillover effect on coking coal. What that means, you can have limited source of coking coal. For example, some of the coal can be converted into gas coal, and some can be converted into steam coal so that it can be used for power and heat supply. In Shanxi, for example, we are relying on the traffic railway line in the southern part of the province. And last year, we have seen a lot of reduction of traffic vehicles from 5,000 vehicles per day to 3,000 vehicles per day. So we carried out a lot of meetings to ensure the supply, but this is mainly for steam coal used for the purpose of power generation and heat supply. And also, let me clearly define the concept of domestic thermal coal. It is for public utilities. And last year, in April, there was a new document released by the central government, which decides to look into the situation of price fluctuations in the coal industry. And it's specifically singled out domestic thermal coal. So when we talk about prices and price speculations and price control, we're mainly talking about domestic thermal coal. And in last April, there was a policy which clearly defined this particular type of coal, because domestic thermal coal is for heat supply, for power generation. And because power price is something public, it has a lot of public ramifications. But for coking coal, we are directly related to the steel market. Steel price may change and may fluctuate between 4,000 to 6,000 yuan per ton, and we are talking about many different types of steel. And the higher quality the steel, the more optimistic for our industry. So the price of coking coal is mainly market-driven, and it's market-oriented. So this is the first slide of my presentation. This is just to set the record straight. I was given a task to mainly talk about the risks of coking coal in Shanxi province. Let me say this first. For coking coal, you need to look at China, and in China you need to look to Shanxi province. Shanxi's coking coal has three advantages. We have relatively good resource scale, we have relatively good quality, and relatively good follow-up support. I have two charts on this slide. On the left, we have the proportion of resources by provinces. Shanxi accounts for roughly 45%. If you look at the other provinces, we have 19%. As one section indicated on this chart, and this is the combination of all the other provinces. After those provinces indicated on this chart, Anhui, Shandong, so Shanxi accounts for roughly 50%. What is the second province? The second province accounts for 8 to 9%, and there's no province that is accounting for more than 10% in terms of coking coal resources. If you look at the production in recent years, you would know that starting from 2016 to 2020, in Shanxi province, no matter it is coking coal or other types of coal, the production has been on the rise year by year. So coking coal production and fat coal, we have seen an increase in proportion in the mix of China's total. But from 2016 to 2019, the increase has been very significant. But between 2019 and 2022, it has the curve has flattened. So that is to say that we have basically peaked the production in terms of coking coal. So these two charts give you a general idea about our resource advantages and then our production curve. So we account for half of China's coking coal production.
We know that coking coal is a rare resource and it's a very scarce resource. So 10% means that it only accounts for 10% of the world, and that is 19% in China. And the China's coking coal reserve accounts for 45% of the world's total, which means that China actually has a bit of a natural advantage in this regard. But only 2% of the coal that can be excavated. This is only the number. There are also some limitations concerning excavation. So this is really a scarce resource. It is even more scarce than that of the rare earths. From this picture, we can see this some very clear concept and allocation of resources. Also, the coking coal in Shanxi has very good quality. It has all of these categories, all of the types of coking coal. So this is a natural advantage of Shanxi compared to the other coal varieties. It has its own advantage. So from Luliang in the north to Xiangyang to Xiangfen in the southern part, it is evenly distributed with coking coal resources, and it is distributed along the river. But because of the protection of water resources, especially along the Fenghe stream, not all of the resources can be excavated. Only 2.4% can be excavated, but we also need to factor in the environmental protection aspect, so that further limits the resource that can be developed, can be explored. The coking coal in Shanxi is without a doubt the best in the world in quality. We talk about Mongolia coal, the Australian coal, and other imports of coal. But we believe that Shanxi is the hometown of coking coal. So there are two numbers that I listed here. The first is 75%, the second is 92%. And we have a previous speaker talking about the price difference between low sulfur and high sulfur coal. And this year it was about 300 yuan, and earlier it can be as high as 600 yuan. So if you do not know about the stickiness of the coals, and the 70% means that the high sulfur, low sticky coal accounts for about 70% of the low sulfur and high stickiness coal. So this kind of coking coal in Shanxi has this strong caking property. And this kind of quality also has to do with the pricing mechanism of coking coal. So far, I believe, our understanding of coking coal is still developing. And we now have realized that caking property is an important contributor and a determinator for pricing of the coking coal. It should be better reflected from the pricing of the coal. So experts in coal blender given us very high demand and call it the best in the world for Shanxi's coking coal. It has been widely recognized by the experts from all over the world. The third quality of Shanxi's coking coal is the follow-up support. We have an indicator called the survival index. This is used to measure the support of mining activity. If this index is above 1, it is of good condition. And above 0, it is we can see that besides Shanxi, Guizhou, and Xinjiang, survival index is above 0. Only Guizhou and Xinjiang and Shanxi are above 0. But Guizhou and Xinjiang do not have reserve for coking. Guizhou province has a low reserve in terms of the resources. So the coking coal of Shanxi's proportion in the world is still accounting for a very large amount in terms of its reserve as well as capacity. It is a better position in this respect. Now let's focus on some of the risks. First, according to the available statistics, there is one common risk faced by the coking coal industry in China, that is the short remaining service life for mines in major producing provinces. So most of them are 2-digit. There are some provinces are in mines in some of the major provinces. They only have service period of service life of less than 10 years. According to the consumption intensity in recent years, the unbalanced development between reserves and consumption will make it difficult for us to meet the demand to maintain long-term and stable growth of Chinese economy. The second potential risk is over-exploitation, both in total and main coal types. We know that the production of coking coal accounts for about 1/3 of the total reserves. So for many years, this over-exploitation has already exceeds the sustainability of the mines. On the right-hand side, we can see the split of different types of coke or coal. And from this pie chart, we can see that the primary coking coal plus fat coal accounts for about 46% of the total reserve. The third point is that the share of coking coal production in China is greater than that of resources. In the past, it was lower than that of resources, but it has changed since 2022. So this situation, this overexploitation, also happens in Shanxi. On the right-hand side, as I mentioned, it's a pie chart for different types of coals and their reserves. Risk number 3, overcapacity mining. I think it is a common problem and a familiar issue faced by all of the coal mine professionals. The problem production exceeding approved capacity is found in different degrees, especially in open cast mines. Potential risk number 4, unreasonable abandonment of mining. The first phenomenon is abandonment of thin coal seam, which is a waste of resources, and second is selective mining in thick coal seams, which fails to meet national recovery rate requirement. There are also abandonment of coal seams in difficult areas with harsh environments such as steep slope, flood, and fire hazards. And fourth is abandonment of mines due to improper link-ups. This might give rise to sharp decrease in coal production to point out some of the misbehaviors and unreasonable abandonment in coal mining. So we will have different calculations of coal production. However, the actual production is lower than that of the projection. This is mainly because of the unreasonable abandonment. Number 5, steel and coke overcapacity increased coking coal demand intensity. So coking coal is now without right now does not have a cyclical attribute. And there is a weakening in the correlation between coking coal price and steel capacity. Last year, the steel production and capacity is higher than that of coking coal. So for coking coal, the production last year is quite meager. So since the supply-side structural reform, we need to take a different perspective concerning the total volume of steel production and that of coking coal. Here is the conclusion. The one that above, the triangle above, is the steel and coal capacity that contribute to production increase, and the triangular box down under is the coking coal capacity that can contribute to production. It is quite stable with a slight decline. After comparison, we can find that for a relatively long time, since 2016, the profit was mainly found in steel industry, and the steel price gross margin is higher than that of coking coal by about 10 to 20 percentage points. So our industrial chain's profit has been found in the steel industry, steel and iron industry, and in the next few years, there will be some new capacity added to the iron and steel industry. For example, high furnace, and so on.
So after the conversion, it may seem it is just a production calculation. After those high furnaces deployed, we will be able to dramatically improve the productivity. One of the direct consequences of that is that the steel production will increase from 800 million ton in 2016 to 1.08 billion tons last year. So it's roughly an increase of 200 million tons. For coking coal, according to our estimates, in recent years it didn't quite grow so significantly. So that is why we have this mismatch between coking coal and steel. So the coking coal capacity that can contribute production is stable within a slight decline, as was talked about this morning, that we have the excessive capacity in steel, but coking coal is in short supply. Another potential risk, number 6, is inventory of coking coal industry chain and supply chain has been falling for years, and there's no room to go further lower. This was touched upon in the morning. I compared the inventory from 2019 to 2021. As of January, the inventory cut was above 20 million tons. So this is the estimated result. Well, some people say that since you have a low inventory, you don't need to supplement the inventory. Well, you can do that, but if starting from 2019 to 2023, if you have a inventory drop and decline, and then how can you support the production of steel? You are using up your inventory, and if the stock this year is not enough, you have to rely on more production of the coal mines. So that is why when you do analysis, you have to understand, you have to know whether you can achieve the inventory coal that has been used up. So because over time you have to supplement the inventory just to make sure that you have a sufficient stock. Potential risk number 7, effective and reliable international supply faces greater uncertainty. We have changes unseen in a century. And this is a very clear characterization of the current international situation. And we have uncertainties from from stable supply. We have, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic, and also disruptions of coal imported from Mongolia and extreme weather conditions in Australia. And that is why import from Australia has been cut by 19%. And that is why our colleague from Baosteel, and they say that they are not so optimistic about the rise of import from Australia. This is based on historic calculations, because between 2016 and 2019, the coking coal production has increased from 160 to 190 million tons. Bear in mind this time frame, and then from 2016 to 2022, the total export of coking coal of Australia reduced from 180 to 160 million tons. So from 2012 to 2022, the coking coal price has been going down, but the production of Australia has gone up. From 2016 to 2022, the price has gone up. But I believe this is not so high a level because it's a scarce resource. From 2016 to 2022, the price has gone up, but the production has reduced from 180 tons to 159 million tons. Of course, we had the COVID-19 pandemic last year and the year before last, but also there was a extreme weather incidents in Australia. They have a backward railway facility, and there were also strikes. After 2016, we have the Debbie hurricane. So the cost of coking coal production in Australia is very low. the price cannot support the increase of productivity. So if judged at the global scale, you will understand the situation of Australia better. And we have seen this fluctuation again in this February. And they say that they plan to increase the capacity by 10 million tons. But because of safety reasons of the railway, the production has been cut by 19 to 20%. So the seaborne coking coal export has been declining. I echo with the colleague from Baosteel that this will be long-term in the foreseeable future. Australia will register as the major source of coking coal. And also, India and Southeast Asia countries have entered the window of rapid growth. Indian population surpassed that of China last year, and it's getting very close to 1.5 billion. And when China was in 2018 and 2019, it's 1 billion tons, and in India, it may not register the same picture, but the growth is quite certain. Even if it grows by 300 million or 400 million tons, that would correspond to 0.5% of increase. So if China increased the capacity by 300 million tons, and then in India it would at least grow by 150 million tons. So who else can give you a source of supply that is the size of India? In Malaysia, in Indonesia, they have deployed more furnaces. A lot of the furnaces are put on the ground, and they want to enter the market when the time is right. So they will generate a huge demand in terms of coking coal. So if you look at the landscape in general, you will see that there is the insufficiency of coking coal. Last but not least, Mongolia coking coal tends to be platform bidding and index pricing, and you will see this later this year. And last year, we can convert a lot of coals into steam coals, and also in terms of the transaction model, we established a transaction and exchange center. We're going to adopt a lot of indexes, indicators to set the price. This is a journey that Australia has traveled. The precondition, so the overall judgment is that the model will be adopted sooner or later. So these are the 7 risks that I have identified. So how to solve these problems and risks for coking coal? It's a very sophisticated picture because it's a global issue. We have to achieve generational balance at the global level. We have to coordinate with many different stakeholders, and from the point of view of Shandong, I think there are a couple of ways out. The first is to adopt a conservative way of exploitation. The second is to embrace digital and smart manufacturing. This is simply to make sure that coals can be excavated with minimal human losses. You have to be digital. You have to transform towards smart mining. This will need a lot of money, and we see that there's a long way to go before we can catch up in terms of investment from an environmental perspective. And then for Shanxi province, I believe we need to go digital, go smart, and we have to conserve our resources, and this means that we have to leverage the global market so that we can put our coking coal resources into best display, and we have to make the best use of the inventory. So this is some of the solutions that I have proposed to solve the coking coal issue. I believe this is a global challenge which requires the efforts of all the different countries in the world. We have to work together to strike a generational balance and a regional balance between different countries. In 2023, we also worked out a roadmap for 2023 for the coking coal industry, and we do a roadmap each and every year. We do a roadshow each and every year. And take a look at the orange line. This is for supply. Supply is going down. The blue line is the demand side. It's fluctuating, but it's far outperforming the supply, and it's above 1.1, 1.2. This is almost like a stable line. The gray one is the most important, and that is the gap between demand and supply. It gives you a index, and you can see that this year the index is above 1.0, and it's higher than that of 2022. And in 2022, the index, or the difference between demand and supply, is larger than that of 2021. So this can tell you how the price will go in the next few years. And in 2022, the difference is larger than that of 2021, but the procurement strength is larger than that of 2021. Why? Because this is a very reasonable land. When I worked out this index, the price was going up. In 2023, the procurement intensity was larger than that of 2022, following this pattern. Because this pattern has been proven in the past few years. In 2023, I can tell you with great certainty that the average price would be larger or higher than that of 2022. And if you look at the green line, the lowest point would be March and April this year, which is right now. So this is the mid and long-term coal, coke, and steel intensity projection. And we believe that coking coal is most relevant to the price of steel. Due to the difference of production capacity, the price stability of coking coal is much higher than that of steel and coke. The root cause price is a reflection of supply and demand. It can be distorted in the short term, but the distortion will not be sustainable in the long run. In terms of steel, the asset liability ratio has been reduced to below 60%, which is far much lower than that of the coal industry. So by their standard, it is an excessive capacity. So we have already entered into a new cycle of excessive capacity for the steel industry. Starting from this year, there are new capacity put on the ground, and this means that before the excessive capacity is phased out, the yield would be very limited, and they would continue the cut of excessive capacity. And everybody is saying the proportion of coal in the overall cost of steel making. The business loss of the steel industry is mainly caused by the excessive capacity, and whenever there is excessive capacity, there will always be steel companies losing money. To solve the problem, we have to lessen the degree of business loss so that within a set period of time we can phase out those excessive capacity, and then this problem will be solved once and for all. So if you contain the profitability, then the scale of the industry would be expanded, and then you get into this vicious circle again.
In 2016, we see losses in coal, coke, and steel at the same time. So we believe that it's important to promote healthy growth in steel industry. In coking coal, on the contrary, since September 2016, the long-term contract price of coking coal has maintained stable with a slight decline for up to 61 months. And the profits in 2016 is basically flat. So we see a rising in terms of coal price. Most of the profit were gained by lower stream industries. So if the price of the coal does not go up, it means that we are actually lower the price, because if the cost of raw materials is going up. Since 2017, the profit of a ton of coking coal is only 80 to 90 yuan, which has been maintained for 61 months. At such a profit, coke enterprises are unable to invest in new production capacity, and the private sector also lacks investment enthusiasm. This makes the coke enterprise focus on hard work and cost reduction, on improving services for the elastic demand of steel enterprises. And this actually helped the industry to strengthen its self-discipline and integrity. The production capacity of coking coal is maintained at a reasonable level, which is also the fundamental of a coking coal supply-demand relation. So for the most popular coking coal varieties, its price is about 3,000, and the coke is about 4,000. So that is what I want to share with all of you today.